This is the CodeParadise tutorial in which a little to-do list application, web application, is built using CodeParadise. It's a web application itself, the tutorial, which runs you through the creation of a web application. I've loaded CodeParadise into a fresh Pharo 12 image, and through the Paradise menu I'm opening up the Building My First App. Here we have the presentation, which will run us through the tutorial. It's very handy to know a little about HTML and CSS and understand what web components are and templates being used in them, because that's what's being built if you're using a model view presenter pattern in CodeParadise. And that's what we're using here, because it's an easy and very rich way of creating web applications. On different slides, we'll see class definitions and method definitions, which can be installed by either hovering and choosing to copy the content to a clipboard and executing it in the Pharo image yourself, or you can directly execute it from the browser. So I'm going to choose this latter one. I'm just going to execute the code. And once it's installed, you'll see a little banner on the right hand side showing that this class has been installed now. If we switch back to Pharo, and we're updating, I had the wrong filter, and we're updating the filter, we see here's the new class being created. If we install the second class, we'll see it's added here as well. So slowly the application will be created here in the Pharo environment, but we are staying in the browser here to execute all the code and install all methods. So we just created a simple model, two classes, the to-do list and the to-do item. We're going to add some methods to them. We're going to initialize the list with an empty collection of items, and we're going to have an accessor to access these items. Furthermore, we're going to add a method to add and a method to remove items from the list. Every time we install a method, this little banner shows it is installed. We are also going to add some methods to the to-do item, an initialization method to create an item which is not done yet, adding a description and asking the object for its done status and its description. I'm just going to install these methods one by one. And here are another few. And this is the instance creation method. Be careful if you copy to the clipboard and install it yourself. Read carefully where it should be installed. This is the class method for my to-do item. So with this, we've got a little model here which we can use for our simple application. This is just a model. Now we're going to create presenters and views to make it visible in our browser. First of all, let's create two presenters. We'll use the default implementation and not add anything right now. And we're also going to create the views. In CodeParadise, a presenter lives within your Pharo image, let's say on the server, and the view is that representation of the model in a visual form. It's running inside the browser, so it's actually running right here in front of you as well. And these views are sort of a replacement for what you normally would create in JavaScript using HTML and CSS on one side and the JavaScript code to do the logic. We can still use Smalltalk. And we're creating these two classes as well. All right, so we've got our presenters and views, our default presenters and views created. Let's create the application itself. Since we're creating a model view presenter based application, we're going to extend the CP MVP web application, and we're going to add one instance variable, the to-do list of that application, like of that session. Every application instance is a session. And we're going to create an instance variable to keep track of our to-do list. We installed that class as well. We need an identifier for every application, and we also need a little initialization. Let's do that on the next slide. So our app is going to be called My To-Do app, and in the initialization we're going to create an instance of My To-Do list, and we're going to store that in our globals, so we can refer to it easily, and we always have a sort of a filled to-do list to work with. Every application has a application model, which is kind of the starting point of the application, and in this case it's the to-do list we're going to use. So I'm going to install these 3 methods, and we're going to register the application we just built, so it will become available within the CodeParadise menu. You can use the reset function of that Paradise menu as well to get it, and we can open up a new browser to show the application. So that's what we're going to do here, and you can also use the URL specified here, so you can store it in your favorites or something. I'm executing it, and hey, I've got a blank screen. If you think there's nothing, please open up your development tools in your browser, and hey, there is something. It isn't completely empty, and here we see My To-Do list. So there's a to-do list tag created with an ID, which is kind of a unreadable thing. You can just ignore it for now. We're not going to use it during this tutorial. So there's something there. That's good. That's the first part. Let's add some visuals there. So we're going to add a template. This My To-Do list tag we saw, it's a web component, and a web component can be given an appearance using either an HTML template and some CSS. So here we have some HTML, which is just a little container, a header saying this is a to-do list. Our items, in which we have slots, and slots is a web component mechanism which allows positioning elements within a web component. And we're going to have an input element which allows us to enter new to-do items. So I'm installing this method. If I'm going back to my application, it already showed it. I only installed the method, but installing a method on its own will already update the view. So here we have the header saying My To-Do list and an entry field, which of course does nothing yet. We haven't implemented that. All right, let's continue. For things to be visible, we're going to add a first item to our to-do list. So I'm executing some code here. Going back to the browser, it doesn't show anything. Now I'm using Safari here, and Safari is sometimes a bit odd with updates. So I'm going to close the development tools, reopen it. No, still not there. How come? Well, in the model view presenter pattern, it's presenter which is responsible for rendering its children. So we haven't rendered any children yet, so there's nothing to see. You might be wondering, but how did the application to-do list get there? It is rendered. Well, that's because it's the application model, and the application model will be rendered automatically once you open the application. So it's a bit special. All right. So let's add a method to our to-do list presenter. It's responsible presenting our to-do list, and the presenter gets every presenter gets a model. We put it in the presenter, and in this case, because it's a to-do list presenter, the model will be a to-do list, and we can ask a to-do list for its items, and we're going to ask the presenter to render all child views for the models, our to-do list items, and put it in a slot which we have called items. So it will create a number, depending on how many items you have, a number of child elements inside the web component for to-do list. So we're going to install that method. It will not run automatically, but if we trigger a value changed on the to-do list, our global to-do list, which is part of every running session, if we trigger a value change, it will update the screen. So if we go back now, and again, Safari didn't update it automatically, so I'm closing my web development tools, reopening it, and now I do have the my to-do item, but it doesn't show any content. We have to add that as well. And to do so, we're going to add a render view method to our to-do item presenter. And it will ask the view to render a description. So in this case, we're not going to render children elements. We just have this to-do item presenter and view, and we're going to ask the view to render a description, the text which is part of our to-do item. So that's what we're going to do. And in the view, we're going to implement this render description method, and it will do some DOM operations. It will replace all children within that web component and create a new HTML element based on a string value, which normally creates an HTML span and has the string content in its place. So I'm also installing this method. If you were wondering, did I install it? It's still visible to see the banner, but you can also just install it a number of times. It will just override the previous one. Okay, and this is a normal way of handling things. Larger web components are rendered using one of the render child view or render all child views methods, and smaller user interface elements you'll typically render by asking the view to do some little DOM manipulation or creating some smaller DOM elements. All right, let's update our first element so it will be rendered again. And we have to give it a visual, so we have to create some HTML again for this my to-do item web component. And it will be a button to be able to make a to-do item done, and the description itself. And the description has a slot. In this case, the slot doesn't have a name, it's the default location. Sometimes that's the nicer way to do it. So we're installing this method as well. Okay, let's see. What did we create by that? So we have our to-do list header. We have one to-do item with a button in front of it, which doesn't do anything, of course, and our input. All right, it's time to get some behavior installed. What we want to do is we want to be able to enter some information in the input field, press the enter key, and once we've done that, a to-do item should be added to the to-do list. So we have to add an event listener to this input field, which listens for the enter key to be pressed and then use the input in the field to create a to-do item. We have to announce the fact that the enter has been pressed and that we do have a description for our to-do item. We have to announce that from our view back to the presenter, because the view is living in our browser, but the actual model is running in our Pharo image on the server. So we're creating an announcement which will announce kind of across the two sites used, and WebSockets will be used to do this communication, but that's all transparent. You don't have to worry about that. So we create an announcement, my new to-do item, and it will contain a description we want to use for the new to-do item. So I'm executing the code. I'm creating this class, and we're going to add some methods to use it. So we have an instance creation method and some accessors. I'm installing all three here. And now we're going to add the event handler to the input field. Inside a web component, we have created this template, and this template is running in a what's called in a shadow DOM. and there's a shadow root element, which is kind of the starting point, like normal web document has the HTML document as its starting point. This is the shadow root is the starting point of the template, and from that shadowed root we want to access the input field, and I've called it new input, so I'm asking it in a method new input element is going to answer the DOM element which has the ID new input, and I'm going to create a method new input value which uses this new input element and ask its value property. That's how you would regularly do this in JavaScript. You would ask the value property, and this is how you do that in our Smalltalk code. So I'm asking I can ask the value of the input field. And finally, I'm adding a key press event handler. I'm asking the new input element if or when a key press event has occurred, and I want the enter key to be used as the trigger, and I only want to have the enter key. That means it won't work with Shift, Command, Alt, Option, or one of the other modifiers applied. So I only want a single enter key to be used. If that key press is detected, the method handle new input will be called as specified here. So I'm installing this method as well. And the method handle new input looks like this. It will ask new input value. If it's not nil, if there's a value, it will use the CR trace for now to show the input we've retrieved on the console. So you can look it up using your development tools within the browser. And then we're going to use the server announce method to announce a new to-do item is there with the description using the value from the input field. So we're going to install that method as well. Now the thing is, we use the initialize shadow root method to install the event handler. But this is already called. We already have this running in our browser. So either we have to reload the page to reinitialize that part, or we can use the little code here which executes the initialize shadow root method again. We can do it now because there's no other functionality installed. This might not work in all cases if you're using some inheritance and other functionality has already been called. But in this case we can, so I'm executing it here. I've just installed the event handler on the input field. So if I'm going to go to the input field and I'm going to type something blah blah blah, and I'm going to open up the console. Pressing enter will show me the new to-do item text blah blah blah. So it's working, and it has announced something to the server, but the server ain't listening yet. We haven't instructed it, so we have to make sure that it's handled there as well. So that's what we're going to do now. And the typical thing is to add a listener to the view as soon as the view is created, and we can use the view created method as a hook for installing these kind of event handlers. So the view created method calls it super view created and then asks the view when my new to-do item announcement arrives, it should send handle new to-do item method to itself, and by adding the colon it also provides this announcement value to the presenter. So we're going to install this method as well. But again, we have a presenter which is already running and already installed, so this will not be done again. Reloading in this case will not help me because the presenter is kind of a stateful representation of the application. It will not recreate the view. It will, if needed, create another representation in the browser, but it will not recreate the view. So we either have to create a new session by opening up a new tab, or in this case I've got a little method again which will just execute the code because we can run it again. There's no other functionality involved, so I'm executing the code here. But otherwise, open up a new tab in your browser to get this method executed. All right, I'm executing it right now. So that's done as well. And we're going to handle the new to-do item by checking whether the description isn't empty. And if that's the case, we ask the to-do list presenter for its model. And since it's a to-do list presenter, we'll receive a to-do list as the model and ask it to add an item with this new description used for a new to-do item. Okay. And since add item is a method which signals that the list has changed, it will and should update automatically. Let's try it out. So I've still got this blah blah there, and I'm entering, and yay, hooray, there's a new to-do item. And some more. Nice, it's getting there. It annoys me a bit that I have to remove the input which is there. So let's change it that the input will be emptied once we entered a new to-do item. So we're adding an extra line here at the bottom saying after we've added the item, let's update the view. And this is the method we already have. So now you see on the top right corner a little banner saying there's another implementation. And if you click it, you'll get a sort of a little split screen in which you can see this is on the left hand side, this is the new code and this is the old code. And here you see there's this extra line here. It's a bit unfortunate. Yeah. Here you see the extra line self-view update after add item, which is added to this method. So you can have a little look at what has changed. Okay, so I want to install it. And once installed, it's just saying it's installed. There's no other implementation yet. And we're adding this update after add item, in which we're going to ask the input element to set its value property to an empty string. So in this case, it's clearing things up. Let's see how that works. So if there's much more, that's better. You see, I've just hit the enter now. It cleans up the input in, and we can add a new item. That's good. All right, it's time to add some styling, because I don't know how you think about it, but I don't really like the looks of this. So we're adding some styling, and we can add some styling in what's called the light DOM. This is the global level, and I'm just going to add a little font and some sizing. And as soon as I've done it, it already shows it already changed, and it's showing the bigger fonts, but it's still not very nice. So let's change some styling on the to-do list itself. Now we're going to style the template elements from the to-do list, and that's in the shadow DOM. And now I can access all these template elements. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of CSS needed to make it look a bit nicer. This is what it looks like. Now we have our to-do list header, which is a bit bigger and centered, and our items, and the input field is a bit bigger. And likewise, we're going to add some styling to our to-do item. Well, here you are. This is looking better. The button on the left-hand side still doesn't work, so we've got work to do. Oh yeah, there's one more thing. If I'm adding some items, you see, I'm adding items, but I don't see them anymore. And it's not because I've got my developer tools open. If I remove it, it's still not there. What is happening is I've limited the amounts of to-do items which are visible, and it's become a scrollable piece, but it doesn't show where I am or what I've added. So I'm going to update the update after add item method again, and here you'll see this was the original implementation, and what I'm going to do, oops, sorry about that, and what I'm going to be doing here is I'm adding a method to scroll to the last item so that we always see what we just added. So I'm installing this method, and back again is this visible, and now it's scrolling down in a smooth way so we can see, all right, this is the last thing I've added. That's good. All right, the done button, the little button on the left hand side, that doesn't work. We can click it, but it doesn't do anything. So we're using the same mechanism as we did for the event handling of the enter key in the input field. In the initialize shadow root of the to-do item, in this case, we're adding a click handler, and we're using the primary click only. Again, this means the primary button and no modifier, so you can't use the Control, Shift or Alt, anything like that. And it'll send the handle done clicked to the view. And the handle done clicked will announce to the server that an action is requested and the action has the ID done. This action requested is a support class for announcing. And actually, we could have used this one earlier on when we had the new to-do item as well, because action requests can also have parameters, positional parameters and named parameters. So we could have used that to have a named parameter for the description, for example, and used it. But I wanted to show that you can also create your own announcements. But this can be used here as well, and I'm using it for convenience to not have to create too many announcements. So I'm installing the initialize root method and the handler method, which announces that the done button has been clicked. And I'm using the same mechanism. Either we'll have to reload the view, or we can use this code to update it. I'm using this code right now. Again, so we're having a button which, when clicked, will announce something to the server, but the server has nothing to listen, hasn't listened to it yet, so we have to add it. And it's the to-do item view which announces, so it's the item view, the to-do item presenter, which has to listen to the view. And we're using the same announcement, CP action requested, and the same ID done to listen to this announcement. In this way, with different identifiers, you can create a number of explicitly defined actions you wanna listen to and want to handle. And it will call the handle be done method. And the handle be done method is nothing more than asking the presenter for its model, and since it's the to-do item presenter, it will receive the to-do item, and we can ask it to be done. So I'm installing this method, and I'm making sure it's updated, or otherwise, again, we'll have to create a new session. All right. What we've done now is we've been able to make it done. If I click on one of these, it has announced something to the server, and it is done. Trust me on that for a moment, but it doesn't show anything yet. So we have to update our view as well to make it visible that it's done. And we have two typical ways to do this. Either we create different presenter view combinations for like the state of a model, or we can do some DOM manipulation. In this tutorial we're gonna see both, and for this situation we're going to use a presenter view combination for the for the specific state that the to-do item is done. So I'm going to create another pair of presenter views for the done presenter, installing both, and I'm creating the template, the HTML directly. And here it might look a bit like what we had for our to-do item itself, except for we're not using a button at this time because it's not going to interact. So we're using a span, which is just a sort of a display variant. And we're going to install that. I'm going to add some styling directly. And it also has to be able to render its description because it still has a description. So this is similar to what we have in our to-do item view. You might be tempted to use inheritance here, so both have these methods. That's okay, of course, but be careful that just reusing because it's sort of convenient might end up that you're having to add all kinds of if-then logic kind of things in your views or presenters, because state is different, so there might be different behavior required there as well. For now, I'm just going to keep two separate ones, which have a little of the same methods. All right, and to be able to be presented in the correct way, we have to update. In this case, we are updating our to-do item, and we have a preferred presenter class method, which should normally answer which is the preferred presenter. In normal cases, when this one is not implemented, it will choose to find the presenter based on a matching name. So this is why we up to now didn't have to use this, because we already chose a name which is matching for the my to-do item. That's the my to-do item presenter. In this case, we want to, based on the state of the to-do item, we want to choose a presenter. So we're answering either the to-do item presenter, or if it's done, we're answering the my to-do item done presenter. I'm installing this method. Okay. And if I'm reloading the page now, by the way, this is the first time I'm reloading. Yes, I clicked on the item. It is actually done. So that's nice. And now I can do a why didn't that work? Well, the reason is, I can just stay here for a moment. The reason is that although my to-do item has updated, it said my value has changed, it didn't say my presenter has changed, because it's not the responsibility of the model itself to decide which presenter should be shown. It can give a preferred presenter, but it's not decided by itself. It's the parent, like I said earlier on, it's the parent presenter which decides which presenter is to be used for a model. And often, in often cases, a parent presenter will just ask the model for its preferred presenter, but sometimes we can override that. So it's a responsibility which is in the list and not on the to-do item. So we have to sort of fix this. And one way of doing this is by having the handle be done, also asking the list presenter to render its view again. So we're installing this method now. And if I'm reloading this, all right, now they all three have it. And if I'm clicking yes, so now I can update directly. So that's good. It's a bit of a fix. We could have done that in a number of ways. Maybe a to-do item could have informed the model, could have informed the list model, or some other way around. But for now, this works as well. All right. We've been able to add items, but we also want to be able to remove items from our to-do list. So we're going to add another presenter and view combination to allow that, to have a remove button together with the to-do item. The thing is, it's a responsibility of the to-do list to be able to remove items, but we need to have the to-do item itself to specify what we want to remove. So we're actually making a to-do item presenter, but the handling of it has to be done in the to-do list. So we have to use a sort of a similar technique to ask the parent to perform the real removal. Let's first create the two presenter and view combinations. It's kind of like a decorator we're going to put around the to-do item, which just adds a remove button. And when the to-do presenter to-do item is created, we'll be listening to a remove action, and if that's there, we're going to ask, and here you see it again, it will ask the parent to do the removal. So it will be the list which is doing the actual removal. We're installing both methods, and in our removable to item presenter, we're going to ask to use the model itself to render a child, and in this case it means we're rendering the to-do item as a child of the removable to-do item. Again, it's a decorator kind of pattern we're using here, so it's showing a remove button and it's rendering a to-do item. And in this rendered child view for model, we're not specifying any presenter which we want to use for this model, meaning it will use the default, which is the preferred presenter class. That means it'll ask the model for either its to-do item done presenter or the to-do item presenter. So we're installing that one as well. Now our to-do list presenter will receive this handle remove. It receives the to-do item which we want to remove, and this can take place. And of course we have to make it visible, and as I said, it's kind of like a remove button alongside a slot, and this is a default slot again, which just contains the to-do item itself. All right, and some styling of this item as well. Inside the view, we are adding another click event handler to allow us to click on this remove button and have it announced to the server. So we're adding two methods. Since it's not visible yet, we don't have to make this little update we did before because it's not showing at the moment. But we do want to show it, and this is done from the to-do list presenter. In the to-do list presenter, I'm going to show you the original implementation. We just asked render all child views for models to-do list items and render it in the slot named items. Because there's no specific presenter specified, it will use the default presenter, which used to be our to-do item or to-do item done presenter. But in this case, we want to explicitly have it use this decorated presenter, the removable to-do item. So we're using a slightly different variant of the render method, and it's called the render all child views for models using a presenter and add the slot named. And this using presenter can either receive a class reference directly, or we can ask, or we can give it a block, in which case we can ask the model, which is given as a parameter to this block. We can ask the model for something, although in this case I've used the class directly in this block, but as I said, we could have used this without a block as well. But this is the more general approach of using it. So we're asking all to-do items to be rendered using this removable to-do item presenter. So it will show a remove button and it will show the to-do item. And for showing the to-do item, it will ask the to-do item for its preferred presenter. So in that case, it sort of dribbles down. It's a tree structure. The DOM is a tree-based structure, and this is how we build such a thing up. So I'm installing this method as well, and it's time to reload because it's the change which is bigger than automatically can be rendered. So I'm reloading it, and here we have our removable items. So let's see if I can remove items and it will update the screen automatically, because we have in the add item, remove item, we have a value changed signaled by the model, which is picked up by the presenter. It's like, oh, something has changed, so I'm going to re-render the view. And the framework is intelligent. It knows what has changed and what not, so it doesn't re-render the whole screen. It only re-renders the parts which have changed. Okay, so far so good. Oh, sorry. Well, there's one thing I'd like to add, because I haven't done any real DOM manipulation stuff yet, and so we're going to add another feature. Like, we don't want to have too many to-do items on our list. So yeah, we gotta keep ourselves not too much occupied with all kinds of to-do things. So we're adding a limit to that, and we're adding a method to check how many not done items we have. And we say that a to-do list, so this is a method for the to-do list, and we're adding a method which states whether the to-do list is full based on the to-do count being 5 or more. All right, both installed. And now we're going to update our to-do method to check whether, if it's full, it will just not add anything more. And we're going to add a little code here to check on the status change on our to-do item, because if it's changing from being to-do to done, we want to sort of recalculate our situation, whether we're full or not. So we're keeping track of our to-do item. That's an extra thing we do when we're adding an item to our to-do list. Since we already have a list of to-do items in our collection, I'm just going to call a little method here which installs these same event listeners on the existing list. Otherwise, the application will partly listen to already installed or used to-do items. So I'm executing that. And we're going to change the remove item, and here we're unsubscribing the fact that we were listening to a to-do item if we remove it from our list. So installing this method as well here. This is to change this little unsubscribe is added. Install. All right. And the item changed, which is sent to the to-do list once an item has changed. And we might do some calculations and stuff, but for now we're just signaling that the to-do list has changed, so we can use this to re-render the view. For now, it's recalculating the count every time it changes, but that's for this application that's good enough. So we can just use this value changed method. And we did a fix on our handle be done earlier on, because it needed to, I'm scrolling down here, it needed to update the list once it was done. But now with this mechanism in place, it automatically will update the list, so we don't need this fix anymore, so we can remove it by reinstalling the original method. Okay, and the next step is to be able to have a visual of the fact that the to-do list is full and we can't add any more items. And as said, this time I'm not going to use a new presenter view combination, but I'm going to use some DOM manipulation. I'm going to change the DOM structure. And what I'm going to do, if the list is full, I want to show the input field instead of what needs to be done. I want to see the text, the to-do list is full, and it should be colored a bit different and should be disabled. You shouldn't be able to go into this input field. And disabling and the placeholder text are changed by this render is full method. And I'm changing, as I said, some like looks. It should become red, and like in CSS you can change things based on their status. So once it's disabled, I'm going to make it a bit more reddish color, red-like color, and I'm installing that as well. Okay, and oh yeah, of course, I think what have I missed? Well, I missed, this is added. You can look it up here. I have to, of course, call this method to render the isFull status. We add that to the to-do list presenter. We add a render method, and we're installing it. All right, let's update our list. So this visual change should be taken care of. And if we go back, hey, the to-do list is already full because I've got more than 5 to-do items which are still open. So I'm going to close a few. Hey, and as soon as I reached 4, there's room for adding some more. So some more. And as soon as I reach it, it says it's full again. I can remove items, and if I remove an open item, yeah, there's room for some more. So we just created our little to-do application, which allows us to enter new to-do items. We can mark them as being done. We've made sure we're not adding too much work on our plate by limiting the amount of open to-do items. And we used, well, a number of presenter types and mechanisms, as well as DOM manipulation. So that sort of sums up our little application. I hope you liked it, learned a little bit about it, and might use it for developing your own applications. Feel free to reach out if you've got questions, and of course share whatever you have made, and make a little video or post your code on one of the repositories for others to enjoy. All right, bye bye.